Welcome to another episode of Real Estate, Real Life, Real Talk, Real Live with the Real Secrets of Money, with your host, myself, Damon the Agent, also known as the Real Estate and Insurance Advisor. I want to thank each and every one of you all for joining me today. Excuse me. Um, I also want to thank you. I know some of you have missed me last week. I will be here next week, but I will not be here 2 weeks from today, which will be May the 1st. Alexa, turn the volume down. As always, I like to jump into the wonderful world of real estate. And today I'll be talking about deed in lieu, short sales, and foreclosures. I talked about this on episode 30, which was about 4 years ago, but I'm just doing a refresher because the deed in lieu situation, the short sale situation, and the foreclosure situations are coming up rapidly with a lot of people. So I wanted to just go over it again briefly, just so people can have a clear and full understanding of what they are and how they work. First of all, I want to talk about the deed in lieu. The deed in lieu is like a voluntary foreclosure. It is actually when a homeowner, decides they want to give the home back to the mortgage company who actually financed. Now, even though they're giving it back to them, it's like considered a voluntary foreclosure. Similar to like if you own a car and you can't keep up with the payments and you decide you want to give it back to the people who finance it, and that's considered a voluntary repossession. In the world of real estate, when you are a homeowner and you decide to give it back to the mortgage company, it's a voluntary foreclosure. So here's the thing that some people do not understand. Whenever you give the property back, it does not mean that you are free and clear of whatever mortgage amount that you owed. What happens is the mortgage company will take it back and then they will actually sell your property, for a reduced rate, whatever you owe. The difference as the homeowner, you still will be responsible for it or it will go on your credit. So even though you may have voluntarily given it back, in most cases, the bank is not going to get the full amount. And they do have insurance on the mortgages. That's why in the beginning you get the mortgage insurance is to protect the lenders. But as you know how banks operate, they're trying to recuperate as much money as possible. So keep that in mind if you're ever considering doing a deed in lieu. Also, with short sales is when a homeowner is actually selling the property for less than they actually owe on the property. Now, this includes all expenses. For example, taxes, if there are liens against the property, if commissions is involved, things of that nature. The thing with short sales is the process is not short. And on top of that, the mortgage company that the homeowner has been financed through has to approve the final sale. So because they have to approve the final sale, it's not always a quick process like people think. It's not a foreclosure, it's not a deed in lieu, but it falls in the same umbrella. So it has to get approved by the mortgage company. And sometimes this timeline can take anywhere from 1 up to 3, 6 months sometimes. It depends on the mortgage company and how quickly they work. I've seen short sales happening quickly as a month. And then I used to do a lot of short sales when the housing market crashed in 2008 and 2009. And back then it used to take up to a year. Now, nowadays, it does not take up to a year, but it still takes, in many cases, roughly 2, 3 months, on average. It really just depends on the mortgage company. And then, of course, the foreclosure is when a homeowner has defaulted on their loan. In other words, they couldn't keep up with the payment or they stopped paying, and then the loan has become in default. Whenever you have a loan or anything, like I mentioned with a car or a home, and you stop making payments on it, the loan goes into default. And of course, the mortgage company and bank will snatch the property back after a while. In many cases, sometimes the process can take up to a year, but it also can take as quickly as 3 to 4 months too. Because here's the thing: a mortgage company, typically, whenever you are behind 3 months, that's when they would start talking about pre-foreclosure. And then the more months that's added to the 3 months, that's when they get the attorneys involved, the attorney fees. And a lot of times homeowners cannot catch up because all these fees have been tacked on to what they already owe. Let's say hypothetically you owe $1,000 and you get 4 months behind, and you owe 4,000. Now there are late fees and their attorney fees, and most attorney fees slap on minimum 5 to 10,000 minimum as their fee to even relinquish the whole whatever you owe. So a lot of times, if a person is facing foreclosure, the best thing to do is to try to get a remodification of your loan, to talk to the mortgage company, or to even refinance. Because here's the thing, in most cases, when you try to get a modification of your home loan with the mortgage company that you have, 80% of the times it is denied. And the reason why it is denied 80% of the time is because the mortgage company already know that they have you locked in for 30 years because you signed the mortgage. The best thing for you to do is to refinance to a new company and get a whole new loan. A lot of times it'll be much more better for you because in the mortgage world, the banks look at, we have you. Why should we negotiate a lower amount when you owe us this amount? Just look at it like a friend who owes you $100, and then they come back and say, hey, instead of me paying you $100, can I just pay you $50? You're like, nah, you owe me $100. That's the way that the banks think also. So if you ever looking to lower your mortgage payment, the remodification, 80% of the time, is not approved. It's best to refinance. So those are typical when it pertains to deed in lieu, short sales, and foreclosure. If you need any assistance because you're facing financial hardship when it pertains to your house and you want to know what's the best course of action, please reach out to me. I don't just try to sell homes. I try to advise people based off their situation because selling a home may not always be the best thing for you. There are alternatives, because most times people want to keep their homes in most cases. But you have to reach out, hold a conversation. I know sometimes it can be embarrassing and people don't want to talk because they like, this is embarrassing. But here's the thing, what's more embarrassing is if you lose it and you never talk to anyone and you could have saved it. So hold that conversation with me or reach out to me anyway. Listen, I'm here to help by any means necessary. I'll be back to talk about the house of the week, the Q&A, questions and answer, and C.T.F.P. And C.T.F.P. means your connection to financial protection. I'll be right back. And those were the wrong ones that I hit. I actually hit the wrong ones, but hey, listen, I'm glad you're with me. All right, right now I'm going to go into the house of the week. This property is in DC. This property is a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath. It is in the Trinidad area of Northeast DC. If you're looking to own in DC, or if you're even looking to invest and get a rental property, this would be a prime idea. It is walking distance to a metro bus down the street from a metro, New York Avenue Metro. This is near Gallaudet University. And it's not too far from 295 New York Avenues and all the major streets and corridors in the city to get in and out the city, and also to get to downtown DC. So I would strongly recommend it. If you're looking to purchase in DC, this would be a great home to live in, or better yet, a great investment property. So reach out to me if you're interested in this house of the week. Okay. All right. So the next thing is Q&A, our questions and answer. And if you have any questions and answer, please always feel free to reach out to me and to ask me any questions that you may have, because no question is a dumb question. And sometimes your question could be something that else would like to have answered. Okay. So the first question of today is, what's something that looks small but can delay closing? What's something that looks small but can delay closing? There are various things that look small but can delay closing. For example, an expired pre-approval letter not getting properly financed, not the loan not going through, missing signatures on documents, unresolved title liens and issues. That's very critical. when you get a home inspection, certain things not being taken care of in a timely manner. These things look small, but they can actually delay closing when things have not, especially with liens against properties. Before you can go to settlement, before title transfer, all liens must be clear. It's nothing major, but sometimes people make it seem major. Okay. The second question, if your rent is cheaper than a mortgage, would you still buy? If your rent is cheaper than a mortgage, would you still buy? And the answer to this is it depends on your time, your horizon, and your goals. If you have a high debt, then, of course, looking to buy doesn't make sense because you have a high debt. If you don't have any money saved up, buying may not be the best option for you, especially if you have cheaper rent. But if you're thinking long term, if you're thinking about equity, if you're thinking about tax advantages and appreciation leverage, then buying is a great option for you, because even though your rent might be cheaper, let's say hypothetically your rent is $1,000 and your mortgage is $1,500. Okay, that's $500. 500 times 12, that's $6,000 in a year. But depending on the property value of your home and how much you can get as far as a tax write-off, including how much you earn, could be very beneficial when it pertains to taxes. So you can't just look at it from renting versus buying. You have to look at the tax advantages. You have to look at what you earn. You have to look at your debt to income ratio. These things are very critical, whether or not you would still buy if your rent was cheaper. If you don't have a high debt, and you are good with your taxes and you plan on moving sometime soon, maybe. But if you do have a high debt and then you plan on staying situated because you're comfortable, then maybe not. It all depends. But if you want to get more in depth on that conversation, please reach out to me so we can talk more about it, because I would love to gather more information from you so I can properly advise you. Question number 3. What's the most dangerous part of a real estate transaction? What's the most dangerous part of a real estate transaction? I would say the most dangerous part is deadlines not being met. For example, when you make an offer, there are certain contingencies in a contract. There's financial contingency, there's an appraisal contingency, there's a home inspection contingency. If you miss any of these deadlines, it's very critical, because you could lose your earnest money deposit. Also, you can be restricted to stay in the contract despite if you want to get out, and then that can become legal and costly to you. So, it's not about the house, it's about managing the contract correctly. Question number 4. What advice do you give clients that they don't want to hear? What advice do you give clients that they don't want to hear? Well, a lot of times the advice that I give clients that they don't want to hear is they don't qualify for the house that they may want. For example, with all of the information we have today on the internet, people can easily go to Redfin, Zillow, look at any house they want. People have champagne taste but beer money. A lot of times I always tell people to stay within their means. I tell them they're simply not ready for that particular house when I know that if they were to even be qualified for that house, that they would end up being house poor because all of their money would go towards paying the mortgage. They wouldn't even be able to enjoy the house. Sometimes people don't like to hear that. I also talk to people about their credit. People that I've always found out in my experiences, whenever I ask someone what's their credit, and when someone says, I don't know, 9 times out of 10, they have bad credit, because people who have good credit over 700 plus, they'll easily tell you, oh, my credit score is 735. My credit is 805. They know their credit score. People who have good credit. People who have bad credit are scared to look at their credit, so they don't know, or they act like they don't know. Here's the thing. I tell them they're not ready. Credit isn't where it needs to be. Savings are too thin, or they don't have enough savings. And the first thing that they'll shout out is, oh, don't they have programs and stuff? Yeah, they do have programs for certain things, but programs nowadays are mostly income based. You know, the income limited and restricted. So everyone doesn't qualify for program. You know, first time home buyers, yeah, you get credits. You can get in some programs, but it really depends on your income now. But people don't always want to hear the truth. They find out later on, and then when I reach back out to them or talk to them, they're still stuck in that same situation because a lot of people don't like the hard truth. Unfortunately, I'm going to tell you the truth, not what you want to hear, based off you, your circumstance, and your situation. And question number 5. What separates a smart buyer from an impulsive one? What separates a smart buyer from an impulsive one? This is a great question. A smart buyer is someone who has done the necessary work, who have gotten fully approved, who understands what their monthly payments are and understand what their expenses are, who buy based on numbers and long-term plans. Impulsive buyers, they fall in love what they see online. They fall in love with all the luxury of the homes, knowing that they can't afford it. Impulsive buyers, they stress their budget, they ignore inspections, appraisal risk. You know, smart buyers buy with a strategy. Impulsive buyers buy with emotion. And because of that, this is why sometimes people can buy a house, live in it house poor, because they did not strategize or properly plan. I mentioned this on one of my previous podcasts. I have a client and she purposely plans because she said, even though she was qualified for a certain house amount, she clearly told me I wouldn't be able to live the lifestyle that I want if I buy this house. That's what she actually said. And she was talking about she loves to travel, she loves to eat out, she loves to shop. So she factored in all of her other expenses, not just what she was qualified for. And sometimes people miss that. They think, oh, I've been qualified for 700,000. Just because you've been qualified for 700,000 doesn't mean that you can afford 700,000. And let me explain why. Lenders don't factor in your lifestyle. They don't factor in you getting your hair done, your nails done. They don't factor in you traveling and everything. They don't factor in your gas that you put in your car, your child care. They do not factor in these things. You have to factor those in. All lenders do is look at your debt income ratio, what's on your credit report, and how much your annual income is. So they base how much you approved on that amount. But you know the lifestyle that you live. You know, oh, I like to get my nails done every week, 2 weeks. I like to get my hair done. I like to travel 3 times a year. If you don't factor these things in, you're going to be disappointed because then you're going to feel some type of way. This is why you always have to crunch the numbers, because understand lenders are to help you get approved. That's their job, based off your annual income, your credit score, and your debt to income ratio. You got to make sure that you're comfortable with your lifestyle, whatever that is. Most people do not live below their means. Most people, they got the money, they're going to spend. They're not willing to make the sacrifice, especially as you get older. You start to say, you know what, I got one life to live. I'm going to take this trip. I'm going to do this. But make sure that you are factoring in everything when it pertains to you and what you need to do. Okay. All right. Real quick, C.T.F.P. And that means your connection to financial protection. Did you all know that this nation owes $1.277 trillion in debt? Did you all know that? Not your credit card debt, in debt, period. Did you know that you can move your money and help it grow if you're over the age of 59 and a half, have a 403B, a 401k, if you retire, lost your job, or if you're just looking to protect your money? If you want to know more, please DM me so I can give you the scoop on that. All right. Now I'm going to come back and talk about my topic of the day. I will be right back. All right, y'all. I forgot to even tell y'all, if you're on social, I mean, you're pretty much on social media, unless you're watching me on YouTube right now. But if you are not following me on all social media platforms, please, it's hashtag Damon the Agent on pretty much everything. Please follow me because I love you all. All right. Now, today, my topic of the day is going to be about domestic violence. The reason why I'm having this conversation is because it's happening far, far too often. There are too many men who cannot seem to control their emotions. Um, they're emotionally unstable. A lot of times, this is because a lot of men weren't taught to, a lot of men didn't grow up having a father to actually show them how to handle certain things. And a lot of men become emotional. And when they become emotional, they get angry. And then on top of that, they become aggressive. And, sometimes they want to bully the women they're dealing with. They want to be aggressive and everything. Honestly, it's a weak move in many cases because it's like being a bully. But the thing that I want to say is, women, if you're in a relationship where you're being physically abused, find a way out, especially if you have kids. Leave. Nobody should be hitting on you. You're not a punching bag for nobody. Leave. Find a way to go. It's too many guys who are weak. They got guns. They killing people and stuff. Even if it's a man with another man and they got a gun, they killing. That's a weak move. And there's too many weak men in the world today, unfortunately. You have to start looking at and vetting men, not based off their look, not based off their wallet sizes, their penis sizes, or whatever. You need to start vetting men based on how they respond to certain things. Everybody gets upset. I'm not going to say that. Everybody gets upset. We're all human. But the way that so many women have been losing their lives, especially being married, and then in some cases, some men have been killing the wife, kids, and then themselves. This is just a trend that's going on. The devil is busy out here. And everybody has to stay prayed up. It's just very unfortunate because, you know, people lives are being taken for nothing, all because people are angry and can't control their emotions, because people are weak, they're sick. People don't have God in their life. People don't pray enough. People don't know how to walk away. People are drinking and letting the evil spirits of the bottles tell them what to do and do all this craziness. It's just sad because I rarely watch the news, and turned on the news yesterday and I saw what happened in Virginia. Then on top of that, I saw the 12-year-old and the 14-year-old that also passed away, all the gun violence. I also saw where a road rage incident, two road rage incidents, one of them got killed, shot. It's just so sickening today with all of the violence. It's like, Tupac used to say it in his song. He said, all we know is violence, do the job in silence, walk the city streets like a rat pack of tyrants. And a lot of stuff he used to say is still going on. Like, even he used to say they got money for war but can't feed the poor. All I'm saying to you is, any woman who's in a domestic violence situation, leave. A lot of times, those people who are being aggressive and bullied, they do that because they know you don't have any real men to protect you or to stand up for you. And a lot of times, those people who are being bullies, they punks. Whether they got guns or something, they do that to people they know they can get away with. Period. And then on top of that, there are a lot of people who don't even value themselves or value their lives anymore. You have to value your life, especially if you have children. And I know it's not, easy for a person to leave. I know I'm saying that. And I know people are in situations where financially they can't leave. They don't know where to go. It's hard and everything. Figure out a way. Look at your kids and do it for your kids. Figure out a way. Back in the day when we were all in slavery and there were a lot of black people who were slaves, they were trying to figure out a way to get out of slavery. Eventually, we got out of it, but it wasn't easy. And I'm just saying the same thing when it pertains to that relationship. Being in a domestic violence relationship probably feels like slavery. Like you can't go nowhere. You don't know where to go, nowhere to get help at. There are much more resources today than there were in the past. You just have to Google them. You just have to reach out. You just have to talk to somebody. There's so many people going through the same things. Some people just suffer in silence because they don't talk to anybody about it. But you can tell, listen, I pray for everyone who's going through a situation like that. I pray for all the children out here because these kids, really need both parents, but they don't need both parents if one of the parents is mentally not right. People are selfish and people don't know how to channel their anger and don't know how to deal with certain things. Unfortunately, it comes out in a form of violence. Unfortunately, again, stay prayed up, everyone. And again, domestic violence is no good for no one. There are many punks in relationships that try to bully and take advantage of people that they know they can take advantage of. Those are the ones that's committing the domestic violence. Weak, coward, selfish individuals. So I'm going to come back with a recap. I'll be right back. My recap of today is deed in lieu, short sales, foreclosures fall under the same umbrella. But at the same time, though, if you're going through something like that, please reach out to me. Also, I answered the question and I talked about domestic violence. Look, no one deserves domestic violence. No one deserves violence, period, unless you're a butthole. That's a whole nother conversation. But please follow me on all social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Threads, Snapchat, TikTok, Pinterest, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And before I go, I want to say thank you all for always joining me. I will see you next Friday. I will not be here on May the 1st. All right. I have a settlement early in the day and I could not reschedule. So I'm going to take you out on this.
We sure could use the money.
Time for some upgrades. Are we pregnant?
Oh my goodness. I need to downsize.
We buy houses for cash as is.
Damon the Agent. A name you can trust.